So, welcome, sir, and I'm Nimin Brampat, and welcome to my show. Today we have Mr. Madhusudan Mishra, who is a director of an MNC firm, who started his career with Tata Steel, then went on to Lafarge, and then to a joint venture of Shell Petroleum, and he's a specialist in business strategic business plans, management information analysis, budgetary control, financial accounts, and consolidation. So, sir, today the main theme is talking about doing business in with COVID-19 and beyond. So, sir, the main thing is like small businesses have faced the trouble during lockdown. So, how do small businesses do business in lock during the COVID-19? So, the COVID-19 is going to stay. So, how do we plan and do business with it?
Nitin, I'm sorry, but I missed the entire part of yours because of the internet connectivity. I guess you introduced me, but I do not know how you introduced me, but it is fine. And I missed your question. I I heard you saying that how does small business survive in COVID-19 time? That's right. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, sir, that is right. That how the COVID-19 is going to stay. So, how does MSMEs and small businesses survive with COVID-19?
Mm, See, I think first of all, COVID-19 is still evolving. Uh, we are still seeing, very early impact of COVID-19. We do not know for sure how long this will stay and how many people actually will be impacted. Obviously, people's habits, people's behavior, people's practices, business practices would be impacted. Uh, the long-term impact will depend on how long this kind of uh, epidemic situation continues and how many people are affected. But that is one thing is for sure that the small businesses or I mean obviously there are many segments in the small businesses as well. One is the typical galla ki dukan or the standalone shop, and another are obviously the small scale and medium enterprises. So coming to the standalone shops, they will have obviously have to change their practices because they will not be allowed to have crowd in their shops. So they will only be able to service very few customers from their shops. So they will have to change their business models. I remember going to a medicine shop and even in a vegetable shop, and you have to stand in queue for half an hour to get something simple. So I do not think people are going to tolerate that for a long time. So that is why the small businesses will have to evolve and they have to start delivering to homes to survive in this situation, and probably take orders on WhatsApp and then deliver at home. So they will have to innovate, they will have to adapt, they will have to be flexible, they will have to work hard. I mean, uh, I see some shops they are not willing to change, so I guess in the long run they will suffer. So the larger organizations like MSMEs, which are larger than one shop, I think the situation is much more critical because one they are dealing with heavy duty or large scale industries. So their more survival is more dependent on those industries, and those industries are obviously going through a downturn at this moment, and we expect that this downturn will continue for a long time. So they will have to suffer. The good part is that the government is coming up with certain schemes I'm not too sure whether I mean how much it will actually benefit the MSMEs. But one thing what I think is very critical is that only those industries which are in essential sectors, which essential would I would say that which people actually need, is something which like garments. Probably people will buy less of garments in these times because people will have less of disposable income. Some decorative items, all these things. I am not too sure whether the market will be as pre-COVID and and the market post-COVID will be completely different. A lot of discretionary spending. I think those MSMEs will find it tough. Only those industries which are in the infrastructure sector and in the sectors uh, which are supplying essential goods for household for the businesses. I think they stand a better chance, like consumer goods, uh, like stationery paper, which people would use in any case, which is essential to them. Food processing. These are the goods which will which stand a better chance. Uh, but I think the larger question here is COVID is only one crisis, and in the last 12 years we have seen so much of. I mean, from 2008, if you see 2008 was the financial crisis. 2000 and in the last couple of years there has been a kind of cold war between China and US on the trade tariffs. US is going through a very interesting times in the last couple of years. So all these things has and also the Brexit and also the tension within the European Union and now this COVID. So we have come to a situation now where crisis is not something which is abnormal, but crisis is something which is kind of quite normal nowadays. So this is the biggest challenge which MSMEs would have to face because if they, let's suppose, in 2008, they developed a plan for going through the financial crisis. Now, that plan would not succeed in the US-China trade war scenario. But they planned for US-China trade war scenario, that plan would not succeed in COVID-19 scenario. What they plan now for COVID-19, that plan would not succeed in the next global, climate change scenario, or some, you know, I I think the post-COVID world would be very very brutal, very different, and this is another challenge where MSMEs would have to adapt very quickly. I'm crises are going to come now with a very great frequency. Number two, whatever they adopt uh, through COVID-19, that may not be successful in the next crisis. What is more important is to look at the entire, you know, business model or the essentiality or the criticality of the products they are making. If an MSME is in a sector which is not beneficial to the society, which is not beneficial to the public, and which is dependent more on the sides of the market, then I think it has enjoyed the tide as long as it enjoyed, uh, but the future tide is not guaranteed. So there would be some negative consequences for them. Sometimes the tide would be good, so they will soar. Sometimes the tide would not be so good, so they might sink. It is important to to reassess that whether the MSME is in the industry which is beneficial to the society, which is sustainable in the long run, And if it is not so, then I would suggest that MSMEs to look for other opportunities which are evolving still now in post-COVID scenario, and in the world so far, that they need to look into that.
So, we talked about the infrastructure problem, and you mentioned that infrastructure that will be the main thing that a developing country should focus on. So, sir, what type of infrastructure do you think that currently India requires to focus on for a long-term perspective, if we say for 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years? So, which type of infrastructure would be needed for now?
Yeah, so infrastructure would mean, better rail connectivity, better road connectivity. Uh, I would not so much insist about the air connectivity because it is obviously dependent on the market. I'm looking at the larger population of the country, which needs the rail connectivity, a faster rails, quicker rails, on time rails, more rails, so that people are much more mobile from place to place. We do have a very good infrastructure, but it is still not world standard. Rail connectivity, road connectivity, the housing for the poor. So far, housing has been focused primarily on the rich or ultra rich or middle class. We need to look at, look at the migrant crisis. Now, if there would have been some reasonably priced houses for these migrants, then they would not have required to move around, right? So this is the infrastructure which we are talking about. Because if these infrastructures, and first, the first important thing is that why do these migrants need to come from their states? I mean, why can't these states have those businesses, those infrastructure where these migrants do not have to move out of those states and those areas? So that means there are many areas like Bombay, which is actually suffering from lack of infrastructure because there are a lot of people coming in, and there are there are places where people are not living, are going out of those villages or towns, and because of them, the infrastructure is not being developed. Equitable distribution or appropriate or optimal distribution of infrastructure across India so that people find jobs closer to where they are staying and not so far from there where they are staying. And I'm not saying that they should find uh, you know uh, very poor paying jobs, but they should find reasonably good jobs where they are staying. And that is what I'm meaning to say by infrastructure. I'm not sure whether how Manrega is actually helping in those infrastructure, but that is what the government should focus. And also infrastructure would mean better schools, better colleges everywhere. I mean, if you and infrastructure, if you look at, like, students, I mean, students are moving from migrants is one thing. Students are another type class of migrants. They have gone from Calcutta to Manipal or from Calcutta to Kota. People are moving in large numbers across India. By some chance, all colleges were closed pre-COVID. I mean, couple of days pre-COVID, so that they could move in time. Otherwise, they would have been another migrant crisis. So, I mean, why does a person need to go so far away from his home to study a simple graduate degree? Why cannot there be? I mean, and where he's going, they are not world class institute. They are just there because there is no good school or college in the eastern India or in the northern India. I mean, if you look at UP, Bihar, Bengal, and northeast and Odisha, and even parts of Telangana and Jharkhand and MP, I mean, how many good colleges are there? None. So that means we are actually not focusing on such infrastructure, and also on the backup of these infrastructure, in the sense that, good teachers. How do you create good teachers? How do you create good carpenters? How do you create good masons? You know, so these are the things. wherein you need to create infrastructure. And these are areas where we have so far, the Indian society has assumed that this is the job of the government. And this is where I'm saying these are the opportunities wherein people can actually come into, picture and promote. I mean, what stops an MSME to, or maybe a collection of MSMEs to start a training institute wherein all the workers which are there, which are coming to those, those MSMEs are trained, skilled. What stops them? But they are not interested in that. They rely on government to help them. But it is not the job of the government. Yes, it is job of government, but the government cannot do everything.
Absolutely,
The,
absolutely.
the MSMEs have to come forward. The society has to come forward and find solution to its problem. We are looking only at government to find solutions. It is not going to come. The government has its own problem. The government will look for solutions for us only where it is also solving some of the government's problems. But otherwise, we'll have to solve our own problems. And that is where I think there are new opportunities. Waste management. I mean, waste management is a huge area wherein we have not even thought of. How many good companies are there? I do not remember any listed company or any reputed company which is in waste management.
There are not that many.
It is such a, I mean, there is waste is being generated every day, everywhere. And there is, I mean, it is a source of energy, it is a source of, good fertilizer, it is the source of, uh, I mean, probably, recycling materials. But we are not, uh, I mean, scientifically or very methodically, we are not focusing on these areas. That is where I am saying, everyone, whether it is a small scale enterprise or a large scale enterprise or a small small shop owner, they are all focused on profit making or maximizing the profits. At sometimes it might help, but in the long run it does not help, because in order to create profits, you have to create and contribute to the circumstances which create a stable environment in the society and in the country, so that the profit can be generated. If there is no stable environment, there is no stability in your economic scenario, then obviously profit cannot be guaranteed.
Uh, so, sir, currently looking at this situation, the MSMEs as well as the other businesses have to get prepared for certain uncertainties like this, the pandemic situation, or so we also need to plan for this situation. Am I right?
Yes, we need to plan for not only for COVID, but also I think now the global viewpoint has to change. Should we plan only for COVID-19, and should we just think about whether what will happen if India is changing some of the scenarios, or maybe China is changing some of its policies, or US is changing some policies, or we think ahead about next 10 years. What are the crises which might come in next 10 years? What are the crises that might come in 15 years? Because if I set up a business today, I mean, that's what is happening to the startups today. If you see, there have been so many startups in the last 5 years, and they were just running under the assumptions that everything would be fine, but they were not factoring the other crises which were going to hit the company, the economy or the global market. And suddenly crisis came out of nowhere, and they are also now staring at very bleak future. So not only MSME, but every business enterprise has to plan for what else could be going wrong in the society or in global scenario in the next 10 years or 15 years. Let us only talk about next 10 years. After COVID-19, there would be, I think, the globalization would be on its last stage. It has already been going very, slow, or going to be a deglobalization in the last couple of years, or maybe 4 years, since Trump came into picture, or since Brexit started. Uh, I think post-COVID globalization will take a backseat. So there might be some benefit in India, uh, and I think so. It will happen at least in the short run for the next, that local industries would be preferred uh, over the companies which are coming from outside, or the products which are coming from outside. So it will happen. It will happen for the next 5 6 years. But whether it will sustain, because if there is another crisis like a drought, or a famine, or a unseasonal floods, or shortage of water, then what will happen? So I think we have entered into a very uncertain phase for the world as a whole for the next 20 years, and we do not have to plan only for COVID, but we also have to plan for climate change. We have to plan for famine. We have to plan for deglobalization. We have to plan for health crisis. We have to plan for lack of trained manpower in the country and everywhere else. So I think it is very important for MSMEs, or let us talk only about MSMEs because your question is specific to MSMEs.
Also,
So actually,
we can talk about MNCs also as well, because if we see that at a global or large scale, the level at which MNCs are affected, at a larger scale, MSMEs are affected because they are interlinked and connected to the MNCs. So it is like a global chain. So it would be helpful that we talk about MNCs as well as MSMEs.
yeah. So instead of MNCs, I mean, I would rather try to talk about economy, because if economy is impacted, obviously MNCs or large scale companies would be impacted. Uh, but they have the pockets to sustain that impact for a longer period of time. But MSMEs are somewhere in between, and they do not have that risk taking capability. Their margins are much constrained. Their scales are much less than what a large scale company has. So, and the important point is that large scale companies have the expertise, in many cases, to weather this storm. But MSMEs are sometimes, and that is where I was coming to, that MSMEs are sometimes very cocooned. They are in a very small narrow shell of theirs. They do not come out of their shell. Their business acumen is very high. Their intelligence is very high, but their adaptability to the situation sometimes becomes bit rigid. So that is where I think it is very important for MSMEs to come at a common platform, discuss a roadmap for next 10 years. I mean, it is very common for a large company to make a strategic plan for next 10 years, but I do not know how many MSMEs do a strategic plan for 10 years or 12 or 5 years. They do not. They just see the annual cash flow and maybe the annual budget. That's it. They do not prepare a strategic plan for next 10 years, that what are the threats which could be coming in our way, and how we need to diversify, or how what are the areas which we need to look into. A lot of MSMEs are in their business because of some traditional family reasons, not because of any any strategic thinking. So that is where they have to pool their resources. There must be some MSME body which should advise them. They should uh, sit together, find ways from experts to see how they can improve their understanding of the economy, the understanding of the threats which are going to come to the economy and the global economy, and also what are the opportunities which could be coming in. Large companies are very equipped to do all these studies, but MSMEs or small scale companies, they are not equipped to do all this. So they have to focus on pooling their resources, pooling their you know intelligence to find ways out of it.
So,
The
so
good part about MSME, yeah, sorry. Just to conclude on that, the good part about MSME is that they can be very flexible. They can be much more flexible than a large company. So it is their strength, but they have to probably remain up to date with the global changing global scenario.
so we have had the economic stimulus also, and we talked that we needed infrastructure. So, sir, you being of a finance guy, sir, what type of financial reforms are needed in current scenario? Because last time we had a financial reform was somewhere in 2008 or 13, and it has not evolved that much. Even we see that most of the companies face the problem of accounts receivable. So, how should be the financial reform and what all should be there?
I think more than the financial reform, it is the administrative reform which is required because even if the government's intention is very good or the policies are very good, the way they are implemented, the accountability of the public officials, the accountability of those who are actually in charge of implementing them, or the willpower of the political leaders, that is where I think the reform is much more needed than than the financial reform. Because whatever they have been, actually I have stopped watching budget for last 10 years because I now realize that it is not a very great exercise. It is a futile exercise. People just give policy statements and then there is no follow up on those statements. So, what we need in this country is the governance reform, the accountability of public officials to the task which they are supposed to do, and to just like we have KPIs in our companies or in our corporate, there should be KPIs, specific KPIs of these officials. If you go around, I mean, there have been so many procedural changes in the government, but the delay or the corruption still remains the same. Probably it has increased because I mean the number of processes should be reduced. The number of persons involved should be reduced. If for one license you have to go to 10 windows, then it obviously increases the corruption. And why it is happening? Because of lack of competent people, who can decide. It just needs some simple processes. Because people are not interested in those simple processes, things take time. So I am not saying that we do not need financial reforms. We do need, but that also means that we need to reduce the interference of the government in many of the, or rather increase the accountability of the government officials to do the task which they are supposed to do. What they have done in agriculture, it is very, I think very good. But again, it is just a policy statement. Unless it is actually done, we do not know if it is done or not. I mean, they are saying that a farmer can sell goods to any mandi, which is good. But when it will be implemented, we have been listening to this idea since for 2 years, but it has not been happening. So this is where I'm saying The government or the political leadership or the administration says something that we will do this, but by the time they do this, probably they need to do double of that. You know, it's like laying a road where there are only 100 residents living. So by the time you construct the road of 2 meters, there are only about 1,000 people living. So that means you would have you needed a 4 meter road rather than a 2 meter road. So that is the problem. We need governance reform more than uh, you know, the economic reform. I think we have done many changes, and top of that also, whenever there is a pushback from the industry and from the economic sectors, just like the bankruptcy code. If you see the intention behind bankruptcy code is good, but every bankruptcy proceeding is taking much longer than it is originally envisaged in the code. Why? Because people go on challenging the judgments in tribunal and then high court and then supreme court and then again review petition and then again after some another petition. So that means, I mean, the mindset of the people, the mindset of the, I would say, the entire governance structure, right from a clerk level to a to the minister level, needs to improve.
Sir, so I was thinking about ESG. What I mean by ESG is environment, sustainable, and governance. So, how important it is for small companies to plan for a long-term vision, keeping these three things in mind.
So I think you have raised a very hot topic. Uh, it is like this. So now, if you are a family person, now if you want to be you know uh, I would say, I would not use the word free, but if you want to be autonomous, you want to be free from interference or pressure from external forces, then you need to be strong enough within you, strong enough in your financial needs, strong enough in your finance, economic needs, strong enough in your thought processes. So going forward, if this country needs to be, or in any country, I hope every country becomes like that. Every country has to be financially autonomous, autonomous from the goods perspective. That whatever goods it are essential to it, they are produced in those countries or in the nearby countries where it has very good relations, and also a very strong thought process. I mean, thought processes for an individual, but for a society, for a country, a very strong ethics, uh, ethical behavior, which is unfortunately lacking in our country. So once these three things are achieved, in view of our economic, uh, our environmental background, we now need to ensure that we are not damaging the environment. We are producing things in a manner wherein we are not dependent exceedingly on other places or countries, wherein most of our people are productively employed, and those who are not employed, we have some options, opportunities for them. So unless these three things are taken into considerations, and our business model, our economic model, our economic fundamentals are not molded according to these fundamentals, it will become very difficult in the next 20 years for India to become strong or for the world economy to survive, because we are going to have, will be unprecedented in the history of the world. I mean, I keep hearing saying people that these famines or these pandemics are very normal in nature. We had a famine in 1920. We had a famine or a pandemic in 1820. So every 100 years we have something. I mean, it seems like they are the Jyotish masters and saying that sometimes Rahu comes and then there will be pandemic and whatever. So pandemic comes or famine comes because of mistakes of human being. That does not come because of any. It has a mood to come every 100 years. It is not visiting us every 100 years. It is because of our own mistake. It happens. Uh, just as an aside, I mean, just like we are having a debate, what is the origin of coronavirus? We still do not know what was the origin of 1920 flu or 1820 flu. So that means we had a pandemic which killed millions of people, and we still do not know how it came about. So this is ironical. Probably 50 years down the line, I do not know who will win this war, this corona war. The history will be written like that we do not know where the coronavirus came into picture. So we have to be very, very responsible in the way we are doing our business, and not only the businessmen but also the consumers, because the consumers are uh, their consuming habits is what is driving the producer. So coronavirus, I would be very, very sad if this opportunity which coronavirus has presented us, it has taken such a huge toll on the economy, on so many families, so many persons, that if all this effort goes waste and people still come back to the same old methodology, then I think it will be complete waste of this crisis. So we need to change our fundamental belief systems. We need to change our consumption patterns. We need to change our uh, you know. I was just reading an article today wherein it says that because of the worldwide almost lockdown, the carbon emissions have reduced, but they have reduced only by 4% if the lockdown continues till June, and it recovers after June. Then it would have been reduced. The total carbon emission would have reduced by 4% over the last year, wherein our target for global warming is much, much, much more. So, in spite of all this lockdown of about 80% of world's population, even then the carbon emission is less by only about 4%. That means there is something fundamentally wrong with the way we have been actually working. That means it needs a fundamental shift in our economic model to achieve the carbon emission level. So it is not only the production; it is also the consuming behavior which is actually changing the climate, because we are buying more which we do not need. We are eating more which is harmful to us. We are storing more things which then we can actually open them. Of a dustbin wherein people things are stored. This the malls have become storage houses or warehouses of materials which they sell in discount. So we are consuming so many things which we actually do not need. So this behavior needs to change, and once this behavior needs to change, the behavior of the large scale corporations or MSMEs or the producers would change. This will drive the economic sustainability. We have we have focused too much on fossil fuels. We have focused too much on coal, about the uh, uh, the main culprits of global warming. But what we have not focused is the consumer behavior. It is the consumer who is driving the global warming. It is not. Yes, obviously coal and all fossil fuels are driving, but it is the consumer which is actually forcing the companies to produce more to consume more power and more energy and everything. The consumer behavior has to change, and thereafter the economy, the companies can take economic calls to how to be more economically or environmentally sustainable for the next 50 years. Let us first see that whether we can survive these 25 years. I think this 25 years would be very, very, very crucial. I remember telling some of my friends that I am actually worried about the welfare of my children, because and people like you, because you would, I mean, we are almost now at half stage of our life, but you have just started your productive life, and you would be facing these crises in the next 25 years. I never expected COVID would come. I always thought that lack of water, shortage of water, global warming, which will lead to huge and a huge increase in temperatures, or very, very low temperatures, or floods, cyclones, forest fires. We have already seen in Australia last time. Health crisis is another crisis which is going to come up, because number of people are increasing, number of diseases are increasing, but number of doctors are not increasing. By the time a disease comes into picture, the solution or the medicine of that disease comes after 10 years. That means people will suffer for 10 years. And this is also an opportunity area for the MSME sector. So yes, we indeed are passing through a very tough time, and if we do not change our behavior, our economic behavior, our consumerist behavior, our practices as related to environment, next, a friend of mine was telling me, wait for next 10 years. It will be very, very, very catastrophic. So I pray he's wrong, but I also pray that people change their behavior to take advantage of this crisis. We should not go back to the same old school of thought that was pre-COVID. We are now in a different world.
So, sir, if you still have few minutes, I just have a question that is a bit off topic, but most of the smaller businesses would like to hear the answer for that. That most small businesses don't know how to approach large corporates or big MNCs. So, what should be the strategy for them to approach such big businesses or MNCs?
See, I think it is very important when when any customer or when any vendor needs a large scale or a multi-location industrial house or industrial company. It is very important to convey that the person's integrity and the value and the commitment. It is very important to communicate these values. That person can be relied upon. That person is a person with ethics, with value, and who will not play you know uh, dirty. And if this commitment is made to the company, then I do not think any company will not consider that person, because every company is looking for partners who are not only efficient, that is obviously the criteria, but apart from being efficient, they have to be firms with integrity, with value, with commitment, and with professionalism. If these values and if these commitments are there, I think that MSME or that company or that vendor will go places. And but and these are not easy things, because for that you have to not only that person, but every person under that person in that shop or factory has to abide by those values, and that person has to imbibe those values to those persons, to his team. It is not it is not material that it's only the owner has the values but not the team. The team has to follow the example of the owner. So that is where sometimes people take commit a mistake. They do not develop their team adequately to represent them in in a big setup, in a process. And uh, I would also like to add, with the new Atmanirbhar mission which Modi ji has announced and which the country needs, wherein he advocated the use of local products. But if the local products are of not good quality, then nobody will use them. So it is very important for every MSME or every vendor or every person who is involved in manufacturing or in a service to commit himself to a world quality product or world quality service. So the expectations he has to keep himself from himself has to be very high, and he has to deliver on those expectations. Sometimes we try to cut corners, and I would not say sometimes, but most of the times we try to cut corners. Our quality is not very good, our products are not very good, so it leads to a problem. This is the time now, and this is what I was mentioning about the opportunity that MSMEs and everyone involved in the economy can actually contribute to make world class products, not mediocre products. If you are making a product, okay, there can be mistakes sometimes, but you have to keep on evolving. You have to keep on developing the product. You should not stop a product. Just like Apple. I mean, Apple has now I don't know how many 10, 15 versions. You have to keep evolving your product till you are satisfied, until the market is satisfied, and even then you have to exceed the expectation. So it is a very challenging thing, but it is also a very fulfilling thing. And that is where I think Indians have to shed their mentality of jugaad. Jugaad is fine as far as trying to find solutions, but when you try to find solutions, you try to find world-class solutions, and not mediocre solutions. These are the things which you know every person who wishes to deal with any large corporate or any person has to bear in mind. This is very critical.
So thank you, sir. That was a very fruitful session we had today, and I hope we have some more sessions like this because the questions would be
Thank you, Nimit.
endless.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more questions we ask, the more answers we get, and then we'll have some more questions. So it is something, unless we actually come down to work and actually start implementing these things, whatever I have said, I mean, these are very easy to speak, where to implement, and that is where the challenge lies, and that is where the fun lies. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope I have been able to make myself clear. I hope I have been able to add some value to you know to to your podcast. I hope it helps. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Nimit. Bye.
Bye.